Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up at this informational meeting conducted by the Falmouth Historical Commission. Obviously, the topic that we're going to discuss tonight and present some information to you is about a potential Crown Circle Historic District. The name Crown Circle is something that we concocted. So if you wonder where that came from, it's purely something that we thought of because Crown Circle is the center of the neighborhood that we're talking about. So it could be anything down the road that if you choose it to be different, if we move forward, or it could stay as it is. But just so you know that that's where it came from, it's something that the Historical Commission came up with. This meeting is purely informational. We're not looking for you to make any decisions about what you hear tonight. It's purely something that we want you to take in, and we want to listen to you. We want to get information from you about questions that maybe we didn't cover properly or cover in depth. So this is going to go both ways. We're going to talk to you about some information and provide you some information. And ultimately, we'd like to hear from you on your thoughts and your questions that we can then answer down the road when we have future meetings about the same subject. So if you could start, one last thing is that, as Jed said, this presentation is being recorded. At the end at tomorrow or sometime soon after, it will be posted on the Historical Commission website for any of your friends or neighbors who weren't able to attend. They can watch it online so they can hear the same information and the same discussions that you're about to hear today. Okay, so as you see, there's your Crown Circle there from about 1894 from the Book of Falmouth. So this is, as I said, this is our potential Crown Circle Historic District informational meeting. This is the first of two that we have planned. There can be as many as you need, but this is the first one that's, like I said, dated June 15th, which is today. Our next in-person meeting that we have scheduled as of right now is on August 3rd. So you might want to note that in your calendars as well. That will be in town in Falmouth. So who are we? Who is the Falmouth Historical Commission? We're volunteers. We don't get paid. We're not town employees. We're volunteers who care about protecting the historical resources of Falmouth. I'm the chair. My name is Ed Haddad. The rest of our commission is Christian Valley is the vice chairman. Annie Dean, who was on the screen, is a member. Johanna Reed was also a member. She was on the screen. Tamsin George, who was in the screen, is a member. Lee Drescher is an alternate member. And Mason Wilcox is an alternate member. The way our bylaw reads, we have 5 sitting members who are voting members, and we have 2 alternates that can fill in the case that one of our regular members is absent that night. We love our town as you love your neighborhood, and it shows clearly, and we'll talk more about that later and why we're here today. We meet monthly. We review about 80 applications per year for exterior work in the historic districts in Falmouth. So what is a historic district? Very simply, there's nothing very complicated about it. A historic district is a section of a town or city which contains older buildings considered valuable for historic or architectural reasons. There are currently 7 historic districts in Falmouth. The Falmouth Village is a historic district, North Falmouth, in West Falmouth, Woods Hole, Quissit, Davisville Road, and in Wacoit. So it's something, most of those historic districts were established in 1975. So they're quite old. They've been operating for a long time and have been part of Falmouth's framework for quite a few years. This is not something new that we've just stumbled upon. So we took some shots of some of the architecture in Falmouth's current historic districts, just to give you an idea of, distinctive architecture that we feel it's important to preserve. That's what makes up the character of our town. It's the fabric of our town. When we drive around and we look at these buildings, we may not notice them, but they're the backdrop for Falmouth. And we think it's important to preserve this type of architecture, these historic buildings, because it tells us about who we were, where we came from, who our ancestors were, what they did here. There's a lot of stories behind these buildings, and we think it's important to keep them. So now we get to why Crown Circle? Why a Crown Circle Historic District? The Crown Circle neighborhood is unique in that it has managed to maintain its historic charm and character. Outside the 7 historic districts and Crown Circle, there are not many other neighborhoods in Falmouth who can claim this distinction. There's change going on everywhere, and some of them is starting to change very quickly. But Crown Circle is truly a unique and very charming place that captured our imagination when the Historical Commission started talking about it. This obviously reflects that the residents love their neighborhood for its character and want that character to be retained. Otherwise, it would have changed. So we respect very much the residents who live there and what you've done to preserve your neighborhood already. There are about 92 homes in the Crown Circle area, and we'll show you what we are calling the Crown Circle area. 75 homes are historic based on their age. That's very, very unique, that a neighborhood could be so well preserved. Falmouth is changing rapidly. You see it around you all over the place. You see it in your neighbor, Falmouth Heights, the changes that are going on there to homes and the additions and the tear downs. And it's going on in a lot of places. Falmouth is becoming a place to be. A lot of new residents are moving in, and with new people, there's always change. And that's the one thing you can count on is change. Being designated a historic district is the only mechanism that can preserve the character that exists in your neighborhood today. We believe that Crown Circle neighborhood is a very special place. We can talk about that a little bit later if you have a question at best. But truly, this being a historic district is the only mechanism that truly will protect an area from managing change. And that's the truth. So how will a historic district protect Crown Circle? A historic district ensures that the existing character of the neighborhood is maintained. A historic district is not a museum. That's not our intention. That's not the intention of a historic district. We're not creating a museum. It changes, but it changes with managed change in order to ensure that those changes are complementary to the existing character that the residents want to preserve. A historic district is designed to preserve the architectural and distinctive features of a neighborhood that have survived the test of time. And your neighborhood is a great example of that. The Historic District Guidelines are posted. They're very visible. They're on the Historical Commission webpage, and there's the link right there if anyone wants to go see our guidelines. Those guidelines were put together in public meetings. The public had input into them as they wanted to, those guidelines continue to evolve. But that's the basis of how we make decisions and how properties are viewed. So it's very transparent. There's no indiscrepancies or inconsistencies because we follow our guidelines just to ensure that everything is treated fairly. So this is the area that we're calling Crown Circle. I'm sure you recognize the area, and you'll recognize your streets. You might even recognize your houses as you look at this overview of the neighborhood. It mainly circles, the Grand Avenue mainly circles the area that we're talking about, with a few little exceptions outside those boundaries. And the center of it is Crown Circle itself. Now, this is an interesting shot of that exact same neighborhood. This is the years that the properties are built. So if you look at the darker pink and the lighter pink, those are the oldest houses in the neighborhood. And as you can see, the majority of houses fall into those two color codes, the dark pink and the light pink. As I said, about 80% of the houses are considered historic based on their age. So what are the benefits of a historic district? Well, most importantly, you're in control of the neighborhood. You're going to decide, by deciding to enlist as a historic district, you have made the decision that you want to preserve your neighborhood. You, the residents of that neighborhood. It's your decision. There are guidelines, as I said, that are very clear. They're very specific about the guidelines that we follow in making decisions. There are demolition guidelines. Properties cannot be demolished randomly as they can right now. I don't know if people realize that, but there is nothing that prevents demolitions outside the historic district today in Falmouth. And ultimately, it does preserve the historic character of your neighborhood, which we believe is something that you want to preserve. So this is the process. How do you create a historic district? The first step is public outreach, which we're doing right now. This first Zoom meeting on June 15th. Like I said, we plan for an in-person meeting on August 3rd. And ultimately, based on, we're happy to entertain any questions, any private meetings you'd like to have. If you want to talk about your specific home and what it might mean to your specific home, we're very happy to do that. We'll have as many meetings as you would like to have to feel comfortable so that you understand what this is all about. We want you to be very comfortable as to what that means. So we will go through as much public outreach as you need. And we'll ultimately try to get a neighborhood consensus. We would like as much of a majority that we can. We know that everyone may not be in favor of it, but we'd like to get a consensus that most of the neighborhood feels this way. Once we get that, and should we get that, then we would go to the select board. We have to present to them and get the select board's approval, because ultimately the town will have to outlay some money to do some of the application, which is mentioned next. And it's something that the select board, ultimately, it's their responsibility to approve this process. We would have an application prepared by a consultant, and he'll document the historic background, the history, the individual houses in the neighborhood. Everything will be documented. It's a very lengthy, detailed document to justify why this particular area should warrant to become a historic district, because there's so much control that goes with that designation that the neighborhood will get. The Mass Historic Commission, who ultimately will approve this, also want to make sure that it's justified. We're not just picking some random neighborhood. And then lastly, after we go through all those steps, we go to town meeting, and town meeting will approve it, or we'll be asked to approve it. So you can see it's a very lengthy process. All of these steps after number 2, which is the neighborhood consensus, is something that will be done by the Historical Commission. We will carry all the weight. We'll do all the work. You don't have to do anything. We just want you to be informed as to what's going on. Then we will do all the work to make this happen ultimately. So thank you. Again, there's our commissioners. If you have questions, you want to arrange a private meeting or any meeting, if neighbors want to come in as a smaller group, you can call the planning department. Jed Cornack, who's on the screen here, is the town planner. He supports the Historical Commission, as does the whole planning office. We will do whatever you need, and whatever information you need to have further about this, we're happy to give you. And there's the email of the Falmouth Historical Commission. I know some people have already sent in some letters to us that we have received. So now, if there's any questions, thoughts, we'd like to hear your comments and your thinking. Again, we don't want decisions tonight, but we just want to hear about things that maybe we missed in the presentation that you'd like to hear more about, and that we could talk about at some future presentations.
So Ed, in the chat, the first question we have is from Gary Doodlesack. His question is, what is the age considered historic?
Based on our guidelines, if you were to look through our design guidelines, we consider a historic house anything that's over 1950. So that's pretty much our standard. Although now I know I just had a meeting with Mass Historic and they're already moving that up to the 60s, because it's the 60s and early 70s now are over 50 years old. But for our guideline purposes, it's a house older than 1950.
Okay, I see Thomas Farley, he's got his hand raised. I'm going to promote you so you can ask your question. And it should be clear when I promote you, I think you have to accept it and it will sort of bring you up into the area where you can be heard. So it looks like it's working, good. And then you'll just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I think one of the slides showed that you look at about 80 requests a year.
Yep.
Exterior work. Can you give me a sense how many of them are approved?
I would say either 99.99%. I don't want to say 100, but it's almost 100.
So what would be some of the issues? Color of stain or material?
It's usually becomes a material issue. And like I said, the other historic districts have been around so long that most of the builders in town, the sign makers in town, the supply houses, they know our rules. So when it comes to a house in the historic district, they don't come to our board unprepared. They know what our guidelines ask for. And if there's something that comes in and either doesn't meet the guidelines, we'll sit there in the meeting and work with the owner or the property owner. And we will try to always come out with a resolution that the homeowner leaves with a positive approval. That's always our objective.
So for example, these historic quote homes, which in many cases are probably just old, you know,
Yep.
have a lot of wood and a lot of it rots here.
Yep.
Is it okay to use synthetic materials, AZEC and fiberglass, things like that?
We have approved synthetic materials in many cases. You know, in many, it depends, a lot of it depends on the house itself and what, you know, if the house has been altered. Now, we recognize that your neighborhood it's an older neighborhood. There's been probably have been changes already. We respect that and we'll recognize those and we'll work with the homeowner. But we do approve a lot of synthetic materials now, especially for new construction and additions. Those types of things. So if you looked through the guidelines, you'd be surprised at how much we do allow now. I think in the past, the Historical Commission was very rigid. When I say in the past, probably 15 years ago, where everything had to be wood, the windows had to be wood, everything, the trims had to be wood, everything had to be wood. And we've gone way past those days. So it's a very different commission today.
Well, it's good to hear, but I got to tell you, that's the kind of stuff that scares the heck out of me, and I think a lot of my neighbors.
Yeah,
I know this whole topic came up probably 10 or 15 years ago and was pretty soundly rejected. I don't know. How did this one begin? What was the impetus? Was there a resident or somebody bring it up, or did you guys just unilaterally decide to do this?
Well, quite frankly, last year, I was in Crown Circle. I was looking for the water trough.
Yeah.
That's in the circle there, because we knew we had 3 of them. And I don't know if you've been following this discussion where they're trying to move the water troughs from Gifford Street to Woods Hole. Mm-hmm. So we knew that there was 3, but nobody knew where the 3rd one was. And somehow I got a hint that it was in this Crown Circle. So I was up there looking for it. And I actually met two of the ladies there. They were cleaning their garden and tending the garden there. And we talked a lot about it. We talked about the neighborhood. And I really got to see the neighborhood firsthand. For some reason, there's not a lot of reason to come into that neighborhood. I'm from West Falmouth, so there's not a lot of reason. And it just struck me. And after I left there, I just did a lot more research on it and looking at the age and looking at the buildings there. Went back several times just to look at the buildings. And I was just struck by the neighborhood, the uniqueness of it, and how it had maintained its character.
And as you point out, I think, it's continued to maintain it without, the restrictions of, being bound by all the historic district and commission belts and suspenders. So I do hope you really try to get a consensus here, because my sense is more people will be opposed to it than not. I think we're all doing a fine job maintaining the integrity of this neighborhood, and we'll see how it plays out. But do listen to people, please.
Yeah, we certainly intend to, but I just want to point out, because I've heard from people before that, we maintain it, we have no intention of changing it. And obviously that's true, because you are what you are. We know that. The one thing you can't guarantee is that it won't change. Houses change hands, people sell their homes and new people come in. And that's the one thing that you can't guarantee. And that's something that I think that's the security that we could provide to the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, that's not always a bad thing. We're not trying to be Plymouth Plantation or Oak Bluffs or anything like that. This is a real living neighborhood, and people need the flexibility to do what they want to do and need to do within zoning and other regulations. I
agree. And when I said that we do 80 applications a year, we do about 60% of those applications are approved administratively. That means they're approved over the phone in one day. Because they're usually, what people will do is they're going to change some roofing, they're going to change a window, they're going to change a door. Those are easy approvals, and they go through our planning office and the process in literally without a hearing in 2, maybe the most 3 days.
All right, well, that's it for me for now. Thank you.
Okay, I would encourage all of you, though, to if you haven't or not familiar with the other historic districts, is just to take a drive through and you'll see how eclectic they are. There's a variety of homes in them. There's new construction, there's additions. The neighborhoods continue to change. Like I said in my presentation, we're not creating a museum. That's not our intention. All our intention is to manage change to ensure that the character that's there today will be maintained.
Okay, and I have another question, or if the group, I have another question from Gary in the chat. What has past history told us about the decrease in property values due to the creation of a historic district?
I don't know that we have seen that. When I look at the areas that are historic districts now, West Falmouth, Woods Hole, Davisville Road, even Falmouth Village, those are among some of the higher priced housing, property values, I think, in town. So I think just the contrary, I think those areas have maintained the value, if not enhanced it. I have no specific statistics. It's hard to prove, what it does, but I know those areas have very high property values.
Okay, so I have a hand raised. Looks like Donald. We'll promote him. Yeah, I should just remind everyone too, when you do get promoted and unmute yourself, if you could just introduce yourself and just let us know, if you live in the neighborhood or if you live outside the neighborhood, that would be helpful. Donald, you're still muted.
Now that I'm unmuted, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yes, I have a couple of properties in the area, and one of them is a vacant lot. which at some point in time, I would envision building on.
Yep.
And what I'm a little bit concerned about is what the restrictions would be in terms of design of a property, of a home, of a building there, if we were designated a historical society.
Well, you're not designated historic, you're designated historic district. So for new construction, which is very common in the historic districts, we do new construction all the time. The only thing that we look at or ask for is that the design of the home complements the district. So that can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean they all have to look the same by any means, because every district has a variety of styles of houses, ages of houses. We have Victorians, we have colonials, we have Greek revivals, all over the place. So we're not trying to match any houses. All we wanted to do is complement the houses around it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ed, we have another comment and a question from Marie. She says, thank you so much for your efforts to help us consider about how to preserve this beautiful area as a potential historic district. It is very unique. How long does this process usually take? And can you preserve the land as well as just the buildings?
Okay, the length of time, it really depends on how long it takes us to get a consensus before we ultimately go to the select board, and then we go to Mass Historic and we get the consultant on board to write up the documentation. It could easily take a year. That would be quite normal before we got to town meeting and then approved it. So I would say if everything went smoothly, it could be a year. If it didn't go smoothly, if it took us a long time to get consensus and then bring it to ultimately town meeting, it could take a year and a half. But we wouldn't want to go that long if we didn't have to. As far as if there's a historic district, the commission has oversight of all the area, the whole neighborhood. Again, that's the idea. Again, what's only the exterior of buildings, but we're trying to preserve the character, the streetscape. So if there's an empty lot, we certainly would look at new construction. If there's hardscapes, like things like walls or walkways or new streets or something like that, we would get involved in something like that, again, to ensure that whatever's done is complementary to the neighborhood. Does that answer your question, Marie?
Marie sent it in the chat. So if Marie, if you wanted to be promoted to a panelist, just make sure that you click the raise your hand feature. I'm going to promote Donald one more time. He's got another question for us. And Marie just said yes, it did answer her question.
Okay, thank you.
Donald should be joining in a second.
Okay.
Let's try that one more time.
Yes, how is the commission funded for consultants and things like that?
We would get our money from the town for a consultant. So the town would, because we're a town commission, you know, we're technically employees of the town, but we're not employees, but we're a commission of the town. So if we do projects, we will either go to the town to fund them. We could go to the CPC for funding for certain projects, like we just did in town inventory. So we would go to the CPC for money. We can go to Mass Historic for money for different funding opportunities. But that's how we get our money. We don't have any money of our own. We don't make money off what we do. We don't, you know, even there's a commission, if there's a fee for an application, we don't get that money. It goes to the town.
Okay, I just want to read a comment from Gary. He says, just stating the obvious here, any restrictions in future use of property causes the market for properties to shrink. Therefore, the restricted market causes a decrease in demand, and therefore prices go down, unavoidable. So
Can I answer that? Can I just clarify that? The Historical Commission does not dictate use of property. So that's the planning board. So if there's an empty lot, for example, and someone came in there and wanted to put a condominium, the Historical Commission does not decide whether that can be used as a parking lot or as a condominium or as a two-family house. We do not have that jurisdiction. The only thing we have jurisdiction over or would concern ourselves with is the design and the look of however that is approved to be used. So that's the planning board's jurisdiction of land use. That is not our jurisdiction. So that exists today.
okay, we have a question, actually two questions from Mark Harmson. I believe that's, he says, what is consensus and would it be a vote of the property owners?
Yes, it will be a vote of the property owners, and I'm not quite sure what consensus means, to be quite honest with you. We are trying to figure out how we would be able to get a consensus, what format we would use to get get this out to people, to get whether it's some kind of a vote, survey monkey, whatever. We really haven't figured that out yet, to be quite honest with you. But it was definitely going to be the residents.
Okay, I don't see any other comments in the chat and no hands are raised. So I guess we'll just maybe the last call for folks if they have anything they want to share or any questions they might have. Hand raised. Promoting Gary Doodlesack to the panelist. Gary, just don't forget to unmute yourself when you come in.
Jed, was there a question that just popped up on the screen also?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to thank you all. It was a great presentation. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it greatly. I am going to go now and look at the documents to tell the, what the Historical Commission can and can't do and what the process is for appeals based on rulings and all that stuff. And your presentation was great. And I want to thank you all very much for the work you did tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And I hope, but like I said, I hope if you think about the presentation, obviously questions will come up as you're talking to your neighbors and your friends about this. You'll think of more questions. Just send them in. And we'll make sure that we incorporate them in our next presentation.
And as I think I said before, I added an email to you. I hope it's a much more genteel process than happened last time this was tried, because that was just a very, very sad event.
It was obviously before my time. It was more than 15 years ago. I think it was when they were trying to set them up. And I heard how it was a very unpleasant affair. And I don't know what really was the cause of that, if it was how the presentation was made or not made properly. I don't know, but I heard it was ugly.
It was so ugly. They actually built the monument up at, we call it Falmouth Heights, but you're calling it the Crown Circle. There's a monument there commemorating the end of that event.
Is that right?
Yeah, they call it the Battle of Falmouth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Ed, we had a question from Mike. He says, how does the proposed historical district differ from what I believe already exists with the, in quotes, list of historical properties managed by the commission?
Okay, good question. The list of significant buildings is a list that's required of the Historical Commission to prepare for the demolition delay bylaw. So what the demolition delay bylaw reads is that if a house is listed on the list of significant buildings, the house is the demolition is automatically delayed for 1 year, unless the Historical Commission waives that delay. But ultimately, the house will be demolished if the owner wants to demolish it. It doesn't stop it forever, it only delays it. So that's what the list of significant buildings does. It's just a requirement of the demolition delay bylaw. It offers no other protection, or no protection stopping a demolition ultimately, or anything else about changes. There's nothing that currently, especially in this district, that talks about changes to homes, new construction, what a new construction looks like, what a property owner does to his home. There is no regulations now or guidelines that speak to that at all.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I don't see any other hands raised. Last opportunity. No, doesn't see anybody moving towards the microphone.
Okay. So again, I would encourage you to think about this. Obviously, this is the first time we've presented something to you. I know you're going to have thoughts about this tomorrow when talking with your neighbors about that. I'm sure there are rumors of what people think the Historical Commission does or has done in the past. I would encourage you to come in and talk to us. I think some of them are a little bit exaggerated. Some of them are outdated because of changes that the commission has been very strongly trying to do to make our commission much more user-friendly and much more resident-friendly, and respect the needs of the homeowner, as well as protecting the districts, the character of the district. Because just remember that the district, or the character of that district, is not owned by one person. It's owned by all of you. All of the residents of that district have a stake in what that district becomes. So that's what you have to think about. One person doesn't own that. And you as a group will decide what you want your neighborhood to be.
I just want to remind everybody that, as it says on the screen, the recording of this webinar, as well as the presentation, will be posted to the Historical Commission's webpage probably sometime tomorrow. So if you have any questions, or if there's anything that you need from us, the contact information is there on the screen. And that's it for me. I don't know if anyone else wants to have closing remarks, but
No. Again, I thank you for being here tonight. Obviously, it shows your interest in the neighborhood. That's a good thing. We knew you would have, and we hope we can work together with you to maintain what you have, a very special place in your homes. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're done.
all right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jed. Thanks.
Have a good evening.
All right, everybody. See ya. Good night.
See ya.